Hi everyone, my name is Monique.
And I'm Naveen from Before You Play.
And today we have a 10 list for you. We figured since summer is here, people are probably going to start gathering in larger groups to play games. So today we're going to be talking about 10 games that play well at higher player counts.
Yeah, what we mean by this is basically games that we find that play best at 5 or greater numbers of players.
That's right. And so today, all of the games on today's list are, of course, going to play 5 or more players. But before we get to the list, today's video is sponsored by the World Series of Board Gaming.
Yes, if you're not familiar with the World Series of Board Gaming, this is a board gaming tournament event happening in Las Vegas, Nevada. Going to be held September 24th through the 28th this year. This is actually the second year that it's going to be held, and there's a $40,000 cash prize pool.
That's right. You can participate in the main tournament for the $40,000 prize, or if you want to, there are also outer ring events, there's open gaming, there's a lot of different stuff going on at this event. And if you'd like to bring a guest who doesn't want to participate, there are ticket types for that as well. There are also stay and play packages, which we hear are limited in quantity. And so if you're interested in this event at all, we encourage you to check out a link to their website down below.
Again, this event is going to be held in Las Vegas, September 24th to the 28th. And thank you so much to the World Series of Board Gaming for helping sponsor this video.
Good luck, everyone. All right, now on to the list. I think this is the first time that we're talking about higher player counts, right?
Specifically in a list, yes.
Yes, and so there are a ton of board games out there that play really well at higher player counts. Before we get to the actual 10 list, we do have a couple of runner-ups or honorable mentions, I guess. And we actually have two different genres of gaming as runner-ups this time.
Yes, the first being party games. Obviously, party games play best at higher player counts, so we didn't really want to include them on this particular list to occupy those 10. But we do have some honorable mentions, of course. I'm a big fan of Just One. We play that a lot with our family. I think you tolerate it. You like it?
Yeah, I just don't like being in the hot seat.
Sure.
That's all it is.
So Clover is another one that we really enjoy playing. And then also we have Monikers. That is one that I really, really enjoy and I still don't tire of.
Or Time's Up.
Or Time's
That's what
Up.
it's all. It's a different form of monikers.
Yeah, and then one that I enjoy that I know Monique is not too big on would be Codenames, but also Codenames Pictures as well.
And the other category that we chose to omit from the list is basically any social deduction game. So there are a lot of social deduction games out there, and they typically play better with 5 or greater, right? If you have upwards of 20 to 25 people, Two Rooms and a Boom is a game that I talk about all the time because that is probably my favorite social deduction game of all time. We recently played a game with a lovely group of people at AirCon called Time Bomb. And I think it's also called Don't Mess with Cthulhu.
It's like a different skinning of that game.
Yeah, that's another version of it. And I was very impressed by that game because it sort of eliminates a lot of the stress of social deduction games because of the actual game part of it that you're doing. I don't quite remember how to explain it, but I think that one's a good one as well. And of course, probably one of the most popular social deduction games of all time, which is one that I was thinking about including on the list, and that is One Night Ultimate Werewolf. That game has been very much so played out in our household over the years.
Yeah,
but
when we first got into the hobby, we really enjoyed playing that one over and over and over. And then lately, or over the past couple of years, we find ourselves enjoying it for a couple plays, and then we're kind of done with it.
I think a lot of people who have played a lot of One Night Ultimate Werewolf can say that they've moved past it, I guess. It feels like it tends to be a phase in a gamer's life, I guess.
Yeah.
But if you have never played One Night Ultimate Werewolf and you enjoy social games, highly recommend that you try it because especially in that discovery phase of that game is extremely addicting. And I just remember the fervor that we used to play that game at.
We really enjoyed playing that one back to back. We would play like an entire game night of it with a lot of friends and family. So it's not one that we pull off the shelf very often, but if you have very little experience with it, we highly recommend it.
And that's about it for honorable mentions. So now moving on to the 10 list, I just want to mention that this is not ranked in any particular order. We just have 10 games to talk about.
Yep.
So the first one on our list almost didn't make the cut.
Almost.
Because if you watch our channel, you know that we talk about this all the time. You're probably sick of hearing it. It is Scythe. Oh, this is so heavy. So this is Scythe. It is a game designed by Jamie Stegmaier and published by Stonemaier Games. And this game is, if you've never played this game, you've never heard of it before, this is an engine building, semi-war game.
Resource management.
Resource management.
Yeah, like the kind of almost like the ominous feeling of like a war game, but it's not so much a war game.
Yes,
It's just more of the
yes.
threat of war.
Right. Some people describe it as 4X. I don't necessarily know that it's truly a 4X game, but it is a big map. Yeah, everybody has mechs, everybody has asymmetric player ability, and you're just trying to build up your part of the board, go to war, and complete objectives, essentially. And so because of the fact that it's a big map and everybody kind of starts on their own starting area, it does play better at 5 or greater. You would say, what is your favorite player count?
I think 5 is my favorite player count for this. We've played basically all player counts except for solo. We've played 2
Yeah.
all the way to 7.
Yeah, right.
And then I find that the 5-player experience for me is my favorite. I still like it at 6 and 7, but 5 is the perfect number for me.
With the choice of specific players around the table, people who you know are not going to have a lot of analysis paralysis with the game and who you can trust, 7 players is my favorite count because there's nowhere to hide. Every single opening spot on the board is completely occupied. And for all you players out there who like to just move over to a corner and like sit on your resources, you can't really do that
Not
in
so
the
much.
7-player game.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is obviously not a party game.
Yeah.
We tried to include strategy games on this list, and this is one of the ones that first came to mind when we thought of a higher player count strategy game. So that is Scythe.
There you go. Okay, the next game on our list, we don't currently have our copy with us right now, but this is designed by Gavin Birnbaum and published by BoardGameTables.com, which is now known as All Play. And this game is called QE. QE is basically a game where everybody takes on the role of a different country or different nation, and you basically have unlimited amount of money to spend on auctions. So you are basically trying to pump money into an economy to keep it up afloat. That's kind of the loose theme about it. Because QE stands for quantitative easing, which is a way that governments kind of manipulate markets to try to keep their economies afloat.
Yeah, it's sort of a play on something that actually happened.
Correct. Yes. So this happens back in 2008 when the financial crisis happened. That QE is kind of something that this game is modeled after. So essentially, this one is a 3 to 5 player game where you have a checkbook where you're going to be bidding on various different items, and you are trying to outbid people, but you have unlimited amount of money that you can spend. And so this one plays for me best at 5 players and 5 players only. I do not like it at 3. It's okay at 4, but it's most chaotic and most fun because you're kind of trying to figure out how much money can I spend? Because the crux of the game is whoever spent the most amount of money is automatically the loser at the very end of the game. So you have to kind of, at first the bids can be kind of small. And then as people start bidding more and more, you're like, well, I can get away now with bidding somewhere in that range because
Right.
I think I can get the most stuff by paying only the second highest overall.
Yes.
So the more players, the better because the more chaos and the more fun it is.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's also just a set collection game. Like you're trying to bid on these tokens that you're trying to collect in sets so that they can score you the maximum number of points.
Yeah, it's a justification for why you're gunning for these different items up for sale.
Now, this game is very group dependent, I feel, at least. It's dependent on the person who auctions first and just the mindset and sort of the metagaming around the table. It's not a game that we prefer to play back to back because it sort of loses its luster, right?
Yeah, I will agree with that.
But it is very unique. This is a very interesting game. One of the most interesting games I think we've played so far.
Over the past couple of years,
Over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
And I definitely agree. Plays better at higher player counts.
So that is QE.
All right, next up we have a game that I don't get to talk about very often because I think Naveen would maybe disagree with me on this. But it is a game called Captain Sonar.
All right, I'll talk about it after you mention all the things about it,
Sure.
my feelings on Captain Sonar.
This game is designed by Roberto Fraga and Johan Lemonnier and published by Matago. And if you've never heard of this game before, this is basically a real-time submarine team game where you have 2 teams of 4 players each, so 4x4v4, and each player has their own role on this ship. And you're basically playing the most epic real-time version of Battleship.
Yes. So this game can be played in 2 different modes.
Yes.
There is real time, like what Monique is mentioning, and then there's also turn based.
Right. Now, if it's your first time playing this game, you most likely want to start with the turn-based so that everybody becomes comfortable with their roles and what they're supposed to be doing, because you sort of have to know, You do. You have to know what you're doing as your role because everybody's role plays differently. So you have like, I don't remember the names of the roles and specifically
There's
what they do.
An engineer that gets like weapons ready.
Yeah, one person prepares all the different weapons. They charge them up and they decide when to activate them. One person is in charge of trying to map out where they think the other team is.
Yeah, that person's like a navigator. I can't remember the exact title, but they're basically listening to the direction that the other team's captain, who is steering the other team's ship, is going, so that they can kind of trace and figure out, okay, I think they're in this particular zone or this particular location.
One person is in charge of deciding which parts of the ship to sort of deactivate, I guess, whenever you move. And then there's the captain who's actually steering the submarine. And there's a whole process as to how you can move around the map and you can't run into islands. There are all sorts of different maps that the game comes with. But it is wild. And if everybody knows their roles, and everybody is playing the game correctly, then the game can lead to some really, really fun, interesting moments. The problem, and I think this is maybe what you're going to get
I
at,
think I know where you're going to go.
is there are several ways that the game can totally fail, right?
Yeah.
We've played several games of this where the captain wasn't yelling loud enough, or maybe didn't really know their cardinal directions, or was accidentally saying the wrong direction. And those moments can make the game not function properly.
Yeah. So me personally, I prefer the turn-based version of this game. I think it's too chaotic at the real time, especially like you're trying to manage everything. There is the need to be able to, like I said, if you're the captain, speak loudly and make sure everybody fully comprehends. Not only when you are mentioning where you're headed as the captain, you're also notifying your teammates so that they can activate and deactivate certain things.
Yeah.
They have to communicate back to you, and also you have to project to the other team well enough so that their team's navigator can kind of trace and track everything.
Like
and
a
as
real submarine.
And as these are going back and forth, though, it gets kind of lost. And in all the games that I've played, it feels like one team dominates kind of the vocal airspace almost, and the other team becomes subdued, and then always that team is the one that I found is the one that loses in the end.
It's chaos.
Yeah.
I think that's actually a part of the game. The fact that there's so much going on, and it's like it's supposed to simulate if this were to happen, does not simulate that at all. But it's supposed to simulate the hectic, stressful situation of really having to know your role, I guess, in a team game. And just actively trying to shoot down the other team's submarine. That is the ultimate goal.
For me personally, I think I understand like the need for that kind of hecticness. If there was like a timer that's like, okay, it's your turn, you have 5 seconds, go. But it's back and forth instead of like, we're going right, we're going left, east, north, south. Then that gets kind of like, wait, we've only said one thing and they said how many so far? Like it gets kind of too much. But if it was like, you got 5 seconds after we take our turn, go. Then I could respect that just a little bit better than just the blah, 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 blah. Like that.
Is that a little bit too much?
It's a little too much. Yeah, I think
So
so.
yeah, so we're a little bit split on this. I absolutely adore this game. This has been in our collection since it came out, but I haven't been able to play it that often for that reason. But if you know that you have a group that is up for the challenge or likes this sort of intensity, then Captain Sonar is a really fun one to play, specifically at 8 people. Now, we have played this 1v1, if you can imagine that. Not real time. We did it turn-based. I think you can only play it turn-based.
You can only,
if you're playing it at 2.
Yeah, because you're taking on all 4 roles. So, like, there's no way you're going to be able to do that real time.
Yeah.
Like, you're going and charting what the other person's doing at the same time. It's impossible.
So turn-based at 2 players, it does turn into a really intense strategic game of Battleship, basically, right? Anyway, I'm curious to know if anybody out there who really enjoys this game, what do you do to sort of make all those issues that Naveen brought up a non-issue, or just make the gameplay smoother? Because maybe that'll get us to play it more often, right? So that is Captain Sonar.
Okay, the next game on our list is another one we do not currently have. This one is designed by Ghislaine Masson and published by Stronghold Games, and it is called Not Alone. This is a one versus many style game where one player is going to be playing as an inhabitant creature on a planet, and everybody else is on the same team as humans who are explorers who have crash landed and are just trying to survive on the same planet.
The humans are shipwrecked, and their goal is to just survive, while this creature that they don't really know about, I think, is trying to hunt them.
Yep.
And so this is a game where it's sort of like In the genre of rock, paper, scissors, if you can imagine, there's actually a whole genre of games that are built around that foundation of I choose this, you choose this, so you catch me versus I catch you kind of thing. And so the way that this game implements it is there's a certain number of location cards, and each round, all of the human players have to play a card from their hand that corresponds to one of those locations. And that is where you are trying to go. Now, while you are simultaneously choosing your location, the creature is also choosing where they go. And each time they capture a human, that pushes their objective. And there's also ways for humans to push their objective because there's literally 2 tracks where we are trying to race each other to reach the end of, right? There's a little bit more to the gameplay than that. The creature has a deck of cards that are quite powerful since it is just the one creature versus all the other players. And that leads to really interesting moments because we don't know what the creature is going to be able to do during each round.
Yeah, because the creature can kind of card count after a while. It's like, well, I know Monique played her 1, 2, and 3, so she only has a 4 and 5 left. So I can take a 50-50 chance knowing that on my next turn, I can try to go capture everybody that's trying to go to location 4 or location 5.
Right.
The thing is, the humans can, as they explore more, they can open up more locations, meaning now it becomes a little bit difficult for the creature to try to figure out, because at the very beginning of the game, maybe there's only 5 locations you can go to. But as you start uncovering new locations, now the creature has to figure out potentially out of 8 different locations, where's the best bang for their buck to try to hunt the humans.
Right. And each location allows you to do a certain thing if you do not get caught when going there as a human.
Right.
So only one of those locations, I believe, allows you to actually get a new card that opens up a new location, if that makes sense.
Right.
So it's interesting. It's also group dependent. A lot of these games that play at higher player counts are going to be group dependent because the more players you add, the more political things can get.
Yeah.
But this game in particular is interesting at 5, I would say, because you can play this at lower player counts.
Yeah, I think that 1v4 is a nice, good game for this one. I've played it at lower player counts, and it wasn't as good. And the game also scales well depending on player count for the creature, because the more players, obviously, there's more chance of capturing people. So there's just little tweaks depending on how many players are playing. So that is Not Alone.
All right, next game on our list is a very out-of-print game. So just fair warning. But the reason why we like to bring up these games anyway is because there's a fair amount of board games on the secondhand market, or even just being able to play them, at
Or you
conventions.
can get lucky at at a shop. That's what we did when we found this particular game.
That's what we did. This is a Friedman Freeze game, and it's published by Stronghold in North America, but our version is from 2F Spiele, and it is called Fuji Flush.
Yes.
This is a card game for, how many players is this?
I think it plays up to 8.
Yes, 3 to 8. 3 to 8 players, and it plays in about 15 minutes, and that's about right.
Yep.
And it's basically just a deck of cards that have numbers on them. But the thing about the game is it is a hand shedding game, meaning you're trying to get rid of your hand. And so the way that the game works is on your turn, you're just going to choose a card from your hand to play in front of you. Say I played a 6. Now it'll be Naveen's turn, and if he plays a card that is higher than the card that I played, then I have to discard my card and draw a new one, which is bad because I'm trying to get rid of my entire hand.
You netted nothing on that one.
Yes. If he plays a card that's lower than my card, then I'm still good. We continue going. And if we're able to get all the way around the table and back to me, and I didn't have to discard my card because nobody played a higher one, then I just get to discard it without drawing a new one.
Right.
That is the best case scenario. The thing about the game is you can double up on numbers. So the cards go quite high. There are cards in the teens. I don't actually remember what the highest number
And it's like
value
scaled,
is.
like the lower the value, the more of them there are. And as you have higher value cards, there's less in the actual deck.
Right. And so, for example, if Naveen plays a 14, which sounds like a very difficult number to beat, and I had played an 8, if somebody else around the table plays another 8, because there's another 8 on the table, it becomes additive. So actually, our combined value is 16, forcing Naveen to discard his card.
Right, meaning you playing the 8 and the other opponent that's there also played an 8. You are semi-co-op adding yours together, theoretically, and you both technically have 16s in front of you, thereby beating my 14. I then have to discard that 14 and then redraw back up.
Yes, and in order for anybody else to beat us, they would have to beat the 16 combined value because we are now an epic team.
Right.
and we cannot be beat.
So there's kind of this like hive mentality of like,
Yeah.
you want to join us?
Right.
Because we can all shed a card together. Even though we're competing,
Right.
but on this one time, we can help each other out. So it gets really dynamic in that sense.
It does, because if it gets back to any of the people who have an 8 in front of us, now we can all discard a card.
Yep.
So it's like we win together. But really, it's only the first person to shed their entire hand is
Right.
going to be the winner.
So you want to be involved in as many abilities to shed yourself. You want to be involved in as many pairs as possible so you can get rid of your cards, even though somebody else might also benefit from it.
Right.
But you're the first one to get rid of everything from your hand.
Yes, exactly. It's very fun. It's more fun at higher player counts because of that dynamic of, oh my gosh, we cannot beat Naveen's whatever value, and then everybody just gangs up on
Everybody,
Naveen.
7, 7,
Yeah.
7. Ah, we all beat your
And
20.
suddenly everybody's
Yeah.
cheering and
Yeah.
chanting around the table because everybody's so invested. So that is Fuji Flush. It is a card game. So hopefully, if you're interested in something like this, you can find it secondhand. We had to go all the way to France.
Yeah, we were in
to
a
find
board
it.
game shop in France, and I always hunt into these like bins, you know,
Yeah.
the bins that have these kind of looking games. And there it was, the first game I saw sitting right on top, and I was like, oh, Fuji Flush.
Flush.
I'm just gonna grab this. Yeah, so
Yeah, we first heard of this
There you
game via the Board Game Barrage podcast. So check them out if you ever want to hear about hidden gems and stuff.
Yep.
But anyway, that is Fuji Flush.
All right, another favorite one on the channel for us. This is one that we talk about quite a bit. Very hard to describe, but also very
gonna
fun.
try.
Yes, this is published by Le Scorpion Masqué and designed by Thomas Desjardins L'Espérance. And it is called Decrypto. Now, this is not the original Decrypto. This is kind of a secondary expansion box. That,
No. This is an anniversary edition.
Oh, that's
I
what
just
it is.
Don't remember how many years of Decrypto there have been, but this is a special anniversary edition
Maybe it's a
that
5-year anniversary.
was released this year.
Yeah.
And so if you're wondering what it includes besides a different box cover, there's new cards. There's additional cards.
That's
so
it.
if you've played out your previous copy, then there is this.
I don't know how you can. There's so many combinations. But anyway,
Yeah.
this is a team-based game where teams are going to join. One team is going to be the white team, one's going to be the black. And essentially, you are trying to... okay, bear with me here. You are trying to help your teammates deduce a code when it's your turn.
Okay.
You have a screen with 4 unique words kind of tucked in. Everybody on your team can see what your unique words are, but when it's your turn to give clues, you're going to draw from a deck, and it's going to have a varying number of numbers on them. So
Okay.
it might say 4, 2, 3. So I have a word that's in slot 4, one that's in slot 2, and slot 3. And I'm trying to come up with clues to give my teammates kind of an idea as to which words I'm trying to get them to say in the right sequence, because I need my teammates to say the code that I secretly have in my hand, 4, 2, 3. But I don't want to be so obvious that the other team can try to pick up on codes as we play the game over and over and over. This is such a hard game to describe. That probably made absolutely no sense.
But that was the heart of the game,
Yeah.
right? There's 4 words that only your team can see, and each word is assigned a number. 1, 2,
And
3,
it'll
4.
always stay there for the entirety of the
Yeah,
game.
and each round, only one person is going to be assigned the person who can secretly see the 3-digit code.
Yep.
And so you're just trying to get your teammates to be able to guess the 3-digit code by giving them clues that correspond to the words in
Right.
those positions.
So maybe the word is hoop.
Okay.
And I might say basketball, rim.
Yeah.
And so over time, that same word, if you're too obvious,
Yeah.
and the word is hoop, then as you start giving out clues, the other team can basically steal and try to guess your code before. So if you're too obvious, if you say like basketball, rim, Jordan,
Okay.
something like that, then everyone's gonna be like, wait, every time they say something that sounds like basketball,
Yeah.
I think I know what number that's gonna belong to.
Okay, so this might be confusing now.
Might be.
The reason why you would be doing this is because you play several rounds of this, and every round, a different person on your team is going to be the person who's given the codes. But your words don't change. So the words and their positions are going to be the same for the entire game. Which means if you have a code, if you have several codes with the number 3 in it, that means you're going to be giving clues for that same word over and over again. And each round, the opposite team is going to give an opportunity to steal by trying to guess what the code is.
They're trying to crack the code.
Yeah, they might not know exactly what our words are, but they'll know what numbers they go to if you give very obvious clues,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a very, very quirky game. It's so quirky that amongst one of our closest board game friends group, we have a friend who every single time we play, he doesn't get it. He's like, I have no idea.
We force him
no
to play.
idea what this game is.
It's like group mentality. Like 7 of us want to play,
Yeah.
and he's like, again? This game. And it's like, hey, we're playing this game.
Yes.
Join us or don't. Yeah.
Right, join us.
Join or go home.
Now,
Yeah.
we might have cheated a little bit because this is a bit of a party game. It's got that word trying to figure out. It is sort of codenamesy in that sense, right? We're trying to decipher
different,
words
yeah.
in 2 different teams, but there's a lot of stress. This is not an easygoing game at all because that one person whose job it is to give out the clues. My gosh, depending on who you're playing with, our friends are really intense about it. And
Yeah.
they're like, no, you got to go like twice removed.
Yeah.
You need to
2 degrees of separation.
2 degrees of
Yeah.
separation. And then we have that one friend who always goes like really right or left field on it.
Yeah.
And we always
And
end
ruins
up
it. Yeah.
losing.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the end.
Yeah.
But it's a really, really fun game, and it's one that is definitely a favorite amongst our group.
Yep.
That is Decrypto. All right, next up we have a game that we don't actually own. And this is a game designed by Andrew Hansen and published by Atlas Games, and it is called Cursed Court. So this is a game about bluffing, deduction, as well as bidding, right?
Yeah, so the game is played over several seasons, and there's basically
3 years.
3 years,
Yeah.
and there is a court filled with different people of the court. So there could be like a gesture.
They're all nobles.
Nobles, yeah,
9
things like
different
that.
nobles, yeah.
And so basically, you are trying to wager which nobles in that particular season or in that year are going to be making an appearance. And so the more that you're right, the more points you're going to get.
Exactly. And so the game comes with 4 of each noble type. And so I think there are 36 cards in the deck. And each round, only a certain number of these nobles are going to make an appearance. So the way that it works is each player is going to have a face down noble next to each other that are
between.
shared.
Yep.
So this is going to be face down. So it's private knowledge that only the 2 of us will know about. And so there's going to be a card in between each player around the table, which means you'll have shared knowledge between you and the person to your left, as well as the person to your right. In addition to that, there's going to be a public display of increasing numbers of nobles that are going to be revealed. And so during the round, you are trying to bet on which noble is going to appear the most, I guess.
Yeah.
You can vote on a specific noble. You can vote on a set of them. You can also outbid other players' bets by placing twice the number of coins with your bet that they have placed on theirs.
Yeah, because basically the board where you're placing your bets is going to have depictions of all 9 nobles just laid out. And so the game, the way you bet is kind of, if you're familiar with roulette, where you can place chips and your marker piece in either the corners or the rows or the columns or even in a diagonal, basically indicating that these set of individuals are going to be showing up by the end of the year. So you're trying to suss out, like, I know this information to my right, I know this to my left, and this much is public information. But I noticed that that person over there and that person over there is really going hard on the court gesture.
Yeah.
So maybe they know something that the court gesture is
yes.
in there, something
Right.
that I don't know. So then I can maybe try to eke my way in and try to score some points and try to be clever and kind of deduce information as to where I want to wage.
And whenever you get bumped off a bet, all of the coins that you had placed with your bet go back to you. So now you can put them out again in another bet.
Yeah.
And at the end of the round, when you go into scoring, the amount of coins that you place with your bet doesn't actually have an impact on how many points you get.
Yep.
It's just how many of that specific noble were actually out, because there are 4 copies of each.
And you did mention there's bluffing in this game also.
Yeah.
So meaning I could be like, I have no idea, but I'm going to make a move. I'm going to make people think that she is here in this game. So I'm going to put out maybe 5 coins saying like, I really want this particular one because I know. So then I'm going to force somebody else to commit 2x to bump me off.
10 coins.
Put 10 coins out there, and I'm like, that person's not out there.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that person's
And you
not
can't
out
get those coins back
Yeah.
unless somebody else bumps you out.
Exactly. So there's a little bit of that. And then there's metagame, like, well, the last year,
Yeah.
Naveen did that move. Is
Yeah.
he doing that again? I don't know. So every game is kind of unique and
Yeah,
different. And so
right.
there's a good kind of amount of table talk that goes on. We don't own it, but it's one of those ones that I want to grab for our own collection.
Yeah, it might be hard to get. I don't know how in print this game is, but every time we see it, we've always have fond memories of playing it with our group of friends, and definitely one that plays better at higher player counts because of the shared knowledge and the behaviors around the table that you're kind of analyzing. But it's good fun.
Yep.
So that is Cursed Court.
Okay, we have another auction game. Auction games typically play better with higher player counts, so that's why this is on here. This one is designed by Rainer Knizia, and ours is from Command Games, and this is modern art.
Yes.
There's many different iterations of this. I think Oink even has a little one.
I think it's big. I don't know.
I don't know.
yeah.
Now. There's many different iterations of
Yeah.
modern art, but this is one of my favorite games of all time. In this particular game, you are auctioning off different categories of modern art and
Pieces of modern art.
pieces of modern art, right? And then the piece of art that you auction off dictates the type of auction. So it could be like a one round bet, or it could be a free for all kind of auction, or name your price kind of auction. So now the game comes with 5 different artists that everybody's going to be competing over. And at the end of every round, the artist that sold the most is going to be the most valuable. So they might be worth 30. The next most sold is 20. And then the third most is 10. And then the last 2, even though they might have sold, they might not be worth anything. And so it gets interesting after each round because these values are cumulative because you cash in your art and make money. So
Right.
if in round 1 the orange artist is worth 30, then maybe in the next round people are like, well, it's going to be definitely worth at least 30, but maybe we can pump it up a little bit more. But because it's a finite deck of cards, maybe orange is all being siphoned out, and now there's not as many left at the very kind of last couple rounds. So how are you going to get access to these high value kind of artists? So
Right.
it gets kind of interesting in the way that you're trying to withhold money on certain. You're trying to manipulate the market, saying like, okay, I want this round, I want the green artist to be pushed, so I'm going to put a lot of green art up for sale because maybe I have a backdoor and to try to score as much on that.
To be clear, at the end of each round, you actually turn in your art
yeah.
for the money. And so that means if you have art from an artist who was not one of the top 3, then you might not really be getting anything back
Right.
for art that you paid.
That you paid a
during the
prime
auction
dollar,
for. Yeah.
thinking that you could manipulate the market.
Yeah, so you are trying to have art from the most popular artists because they're going to be the ones that are valued the most. And so over the course of the game, those values become cumulative. And so it's just this is a pure auction game,
yeah.
one of the most pure auction games I've ever played. I can't seem to wrap my head around it. I know you're trying to buy low and sell high, but
You're also trying to flood the market sometimes with different paintings, saying like, okay, I'm gonna make it so that green is really valuable this round.
it's not that simple.
Yeah.
Buying low and selling high is not that simple in this game. There's
Yeah.
this other layer to it that is so important, and that is the whole part of having the most valuable paintings
That's right, yeah.
because of how people are buying around the table.
So there you go, another auction game, modern art.
All right, we are now down to our final 2 games on this list. This next one is another game that we've talked about quite a few times within the past year because we played it a lot, I think. Right?
Yeah, we kind of rediscovered this game over the past year and a half.
Yes, it's great. This is Hansa Teutonica.
Yes.
Now, this is a game designed by Andreas Setting and published by Pegasus Spiel, and it is a game that plays up to 5 players, but it is a Euro game through and through.
Yep.
The board says it all in the box cover, right? In this game, you're basically just trying to create networks throughout the entire map by placing out your cubes, connecting 2 cities next to each other, and then claiming one of the 2 cities that route is adjacent to.
Right.
That is probably the simplest version of what this game is about, but there's a whole mechanism of upgrading your different abilities, and there's a player board that kind of keeps track of the different things that you can do and how many times you can do them.
Yeah, your
right?
player board basically dictates what exactly are the different types of actions you can take. And at the start of the game, everybody has the same core base amount of value per action that they can take. As you start to upgrade your board, maybe you can place out more things out onto the board because you've upgraded something. Maybe you can claim a
Different
building.
colored.
Yeah, exactly, because
city,
you now can claim orange buildings or pink buildings. So you're kind of gonna go around the board, placing your cubes out, trying to upgrade your abilities so that you can ultimately try to push endgame.
Yeah, it plays really, really
Yeah.
well at higher player counts because it is such a it has a really nice timing to it, right?
It moves pretty fast.
Moves really fast because on your turn, you basically can take 2 actions, I think, at the beginning of the game until you upgrade that, which is still an upgradable part of your board, just being able to take more actions. And then maybe on your turn, you're taking 3 or maybe 4. And actions are also very quick. An action could just be placing a cube out onto the board or gaining more cubes into your supply because there's a whole cube economy that you're trying to manage as well. Not all of your cubes are available to you.
Yeah, some are deployable, some are kind of in your stock, so you need to make them deployable. So that's its own like kind of carousel game that you're trying to play with yourself.
And another one of the actions is the ability to bump another player off the board.
That's a big one.
That's probably what you're going to be doing a majority of the time, and why you want to play at higher player counts, because there's going to be just more cubes, more player cubes around the board at 5 players, and the ability to bump people off and be bumped yourself.
Yeah, so you might take a turn where you're going to place yourself in a position where you know you want to get bumped out, because passively, if you get bumped out of that spot, then you get to place another cube out on the board in addition to the one that got bumped.
Yeah, that is the benefit of getting bumped.
It's really, really nice. And if I remember right, you can place a cube that is not in your deployable supply. You can place a cube that's in your kind of your
reserve?
Your reserve, yeah, which is really, really nice.
Yeah, I think so. I don't remember now.
Yeah.
All I know is it's a great thing to be bumped. So sometimes you're placing yourself in areas that you don't even really care about, that you know that other people do, just so you can get up more cubes on the board, because that is essentially increasing your action economy, right?
Yep.
Such high player interaction for a Euro game.
It is, yeah.
Which is what really, really impressed me the first time we played it, and one that I still continue to bring out whenever we have 5 players.
Yeah, it's not very good in my opinion at 3. It plays well at 4, but 5 is like the ideal for me.
And that is why it is perfect for this list. So anyway, that is Hansa Teutonica. Our version is a big box that comes with
several maps.
Yeah, several maps.
Yeah.
But all you really need is the base game to enjoy it at 5.
Yeah,
So
sure.
Hansa Teutonica.
Okay, the final game on our list. We started off the list with a Stonemaier title, and now we're going to finish it off with another Stonemaier title. This one is called Euphoria, also designed by Jamie Stegmaier. Came out actually 10 years ago, and 2013. And so this is one of the first heavier games, I would say, when we first got into the hobby that we were introduced to.
Yeah, I think so. I think this came before Kanban for us.
I want to, yeah, definitely.
Our first Stonemaier title that we've ever played.
Yeah, and in this one, basically, you are building a better dystopia. So you are kind of like I think you're like an overlord or something. I don't remember exactly what you are, but you basically have workers that you're trying to keep not as intelligent so that you can place out dice onto a board to take various actions.
Okay, the theme is what initially drew me to this game. So in this game, it is a dystopian society, and there are 4 different types of factions. There are people who work in the underground, there are people who work with water, in the sky, etc. And so as a player, you have 2 workers who belong to one of these 4 different factions. One of them is public already to start the game, and another one that you can unlock over the course of the game.
Meaning you're gunning for that faction to succeed in whatever task that you're trying to set them out to do.
Right. If you're familiar with games like Scythe that have those star tokens that you're trying to complete objectives and put them out onto the board, this follows the same sort of machinery in that you're trying to put your stars out onto the board. But in this game, there are no points. It's just a race. It's the first player to put out all of their stars wins. Each player has dice, and these represent your workers. And so on the board are different worker placement spots that will do things like gain you resources, allow you to gain cards, turn in things in order to put out a star, submit resources to build markets that'll allow you to do additional things, which eventually lead to putting out stars.
Right.
But a lot of these spaces are affected by the value of the die that you place onto the space. Sometimes it'll dictate how many of that resource that you get. And the different types of resources that you get are tied to the different factions, which also represent a specific part of the board.
Yep.
It's interesting. It's also very interesting because if you put out all of your workers and it goes back to you on your turn, then you have to spend the whole action recalling them.
Yep.
Alternatively, there are spots on the board where you can actually bump other players' dice off of in order to take the action. And so when you bump somebody's die off, it goes back to them, they re-roll it, and now they can put it out again on their turn.
Without having to take a rest action, collecting all my workers back.
Right. So it's this race, but it's also like a carousel type of game. The timing of the game is very similar to Haunted Teutonica in that it just keeps going around and around in a circle because on your turn, you're just putting out one die. You're putting out one die at a time and just taking the action.
And it gets stressful, especially like when you see that somebody is like 1 or 2 stars away. You really feel it. And there's kind of a teaming up mechanism also in this game. You can build different structures and buildings with very valuable resources. So if I'm like, I have 1 gold, Monique has silver, somebody else has silver. Do you guys want to team up on this and and build this building? We can all contribute to what this building requires. And anybody that contributes to it gets to, I believe, puts out a star.
Yeah. So the markets are very interesting.
Yeah.
It causes a lot of drama. This is a good player interaction because there are several markets on the board depending on player count. The bad thing about it is when you place your worker there to contribute a resource, it's going to stay there until the market is built.
Right.
Which can be a long time depending on who's on board, who actually has that kind of resource. Because the resource required is a valuable resource that you have to take several steps in order to acquire.
Yeah, so there could be open negotiation. Hey, I see the 3 of us, we all have the resources needed. Who's in? They're like, yeah, sure, I'm in. And then they're like, okay, cool, like, let's do it. And then you're like, well, I'll do it on the next turn because I'm going to do something else first, and then I'll come back to do it. And then your worker is just kind of stuck there like...
And once the market is built, then everybody who has a die still there because they turn in resources to build it gets to place a star on it, which is obviously very valuable. And anybody who did not participate in the building of that market gets a punishment.
Yeah.
And the punishments can range quite a bit. They're going to be stuff like, every time you roll this value, this happens to you, or it's going to cost you 1 extra of this resource in order to do a thing.
Yep.
But if you are that person, you're not shut out completely. There is a way for you to be able to put a star on that and no longer face that punishment.
Yeah.
But because of stuff like that, there's high player interaction. So anyway, that is Euphoria. I think right now it's getting a reprint, so it might be out of print, but this version is the one that came out originally.
10 years ago, yeah.
And it's not without its flaws, this specific version. There's some broken parts to it that they fixed, I think.
There's a Ignorance is Bliss expansion that kind of changes up a little bit of the rules. So if you are a fan of this game and you weren't aware that exists, I highly recommend that because we have played it with the expansion and it does
much better.
Fix some things. Some of the cards are kind of taken out and you swap them and then there's some little minor rules tweaks.
Yeah.
Highly recommend that one.
Yeah, the rules having to do with rolling doubles that sort of feel a little broken, they are fixed in that game as well.
So anyway, that is the last game on our list that we wanted to talk about. That is Euphoria, Build a Better Dystopia.
Well, there you have it. Those were 10 games that play well at higher player counts that were not social deduction games or party games, I hope.
Yeah, there's actually more games that we've heard that we would really like that also play very well at higher player counts. One of which is Blood on the Clock Tower. We still have not had a chance to play that one.
That is a really popular,
super popular,
really popular social deduction game.
Yeah, Heat, Pedal to the Metal. That's another one that we've been told plays really, really well at 5 and 6 players. And then what's the other one that we talked about recently?
Well, there's TI4.
TI4,
there's a lot. There are a lot out there. There's TI4, Sidereal Confluence, which I think only I've played.
I have not played that one
which was interesting. There are a lot of trading games. We recently played a game called Gussie Gorillas.
Pit is another one like that.
Yeah. So there's a lot out there. If you have any suggestions for games that you enjoy playing with 5 or more, please leave us a comment down below and post some recommendations because we love to read all the recommendations and also provides a sort of
resource
for other new gamers as well.
So there you have it. Thank you so much for watching the video, and also thank you to the World Series of Board Gaming. That event is happening September 24th to the 28th. So if you are interested, there's a link in the description down below. We hope you enjoyed the video. If you'd like to see more like this in the future, please consider subscribing.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.